I will call the meeting to order. And we will start with the minutes of the last meeting. Jim.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jim.
This is the minutes from our last meeting on July 17th in Concord. President Jack Baker called the Goingsnake District Heritage Association meeting to order at 10:15 a.m. with 21 members and guests in attendance. The June 19th, 2021 minutes were read by Secretary Jim Terry and were approved as read. There was no financial activity to report. Mayor Bill Chase's Cherokee Moment presentation was from the Tahlequah Telegraph newspapers from 1887 to 1895 and was about what Cherokees were doing around elections and the 1889 Downing Convention. Shirley Pittengill announced her new book that is for sale now, Hunter's Home in the Cherokee Nation, and gave us information about Friends of the Morrell Home. David Hampton announced the Nandy Hee musical Friday and Saturday, October 29th and 30th at the Hard Rock Casino in Tulsa. Our featured speakers were this year's Remember the Removal bike riders, Whitney Roach, Kaylee Smith, Melanie Gang, Chase Duncan, and ride coordinator Will Chavez. Each of the riders introduced themselves speaking Cherokee, then English. They all told about their experiences, the favorite places they visited, and how it affected them emotionally. Wanda Elliott announced Regina McLemore's first book, Cherokee Clay, and a book signing at the Depot in Stillwell from 3 to 5 p.m. on December 1st. Curtis Rohr gave the blessing for a meal after the meeting. Jack Baker adjourned the meeting at 11:52 a.m.
Okay. Please, Jim, are there any additions or corrections? If not, I would entertain a motion that the minutes be approved.
I so move.
I second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. The minutes are approved. And David, we did not get a financial report from Ruth, did we? Or
Yes, we did. I did.
I
Okay.
did.
Okay. Well, I didn't. So, but David.
Okay. Beginning checking balance, June the 19th was $7,492. Income from dues, $119. So checking total, $7,611. We had paid out to Luke for editor's expenses, $425. So total checking is $7,186. CD beginning balance, $8,672. Interest earned, $4. Ending CD, $8,676. Total of all money, $15,862.
Okay. Are there any questions on the treasurer's report? If not, it'll stand approved as given. Thanks, David. Okay. Next, we will have our Cherokee moments, which have already been.
All right. Thanks, Jack, and good morning, everyone. My Cherokee moments for this morning, I have transcribed a few of the records from the Cherokee National Records, Goingsnake District Records, and it's transcribed from microfilm of records that are among the holdings of the Oklahoma History Center in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And it's microfilm roll number CHN 39. Cherokee Volume 122. This volume contains records of wills, including both verbal and written. And here's the first will. Last will, testament of Watt Christie, Goingsnake District, Cherokee Nation. I, Watt Christie, a citizen of Goingsnake District, Cherokee Nation, being of sound mind and in usual good health, and believing life to be uncertain, have decided to make this my last will and testament to wit. I give and bequeath to my wife, Aggie Christie, and children, 6 in number, named Darky Christie, Go Back Christie, Annie Christie, Betsy Christie, Walata Christie, and Jenny Christie. All of my personal property that I possess in this world, consisting of my home, household furniture, wagon and oxen, cattle, horses and sheep, and 1 set of blacksmith tools, done at Cherokee Nation on this, the first day of September, 1874. And Watt Christie gave his mark, and the witnesses were William Hampton, his mark, Coleman Dick, his mark, and James Christie, his mark. It was recorded this, the 14th day of February, 1877, by B.F. Goss, clerk of Goingsnake District, Cherokee Nation. And the next one is the will of Katie Walkingstick, Cherokee Nation, Goingsnake District, June the 16th, 1879. Now I, Katie Walkingstick, do make my last will in the presence of witnesses, will in my right mind and judgment, I give to my son Isaac Walkingstick first, 1 cow and calf, 1 roan mare, 7 head of hogs, 10 head of sheep, 1 feather bed, 8 pots, and a few plates. This is all I will to my son Isaac. I give unto Ben Walkingstick, my grandson, this much: 1 cow and calf, 5 head of hogs, 1 feather bed. That is all I will to Ben. Made in the presence of the following named witnesses: Silas Harlan and Jack Bell. Proven before me this, the 28th of June, 1879, by J.M. Starr, Judge of Goingsnake District. I hereby certify that the above record is a true copy of the original, and that was certified by J.R. Wright, Clerk of Goingsnake District. Next is the will of Betsy Hicks, Goingsnake District, Cherokee Nation. And this is a verbal will. Kate Walkingstick's statement. Aunt Betsy Hicks said, I will to you all my property and effects belonging to me. You are the only one taking good care of me, and the others don't care for me. I will you everything that belongs to me, and nobody shall ever bother you about it. I respect you. I thought that you would treat me good and take good care of me, but there are a good many who knows what I have said, that I will you all of my property. And the girl Arnie, and I hope I pronounce this halfway right, Arnie Wakey, you must try to send her to school, and you must send her to the orphan asylum. I was aiming to send her there, but I did not have time to do that much for her. My life did not reach it. And when she gets grown, you must give her something for her benefit. And nobody had no claim against me, but I have claims against Miss Susan Bell in the amount of $45 and Miss Jenny Walkingstick amount $3. Also, I have a claim against Miss Jenny Sanders, amount $3. Betsy Hicks did on this, the 24th day of January, 1877. And the witness were Miss Mary Harlan, Mrs. Katie Terrapin. And here's the certification. I hereby certify that the above witness statement was sworn to and subscribed before me this the 31st day of January 1877. Jess R. Bird, Judge of the District Court of Goingsnake District, Cherokee Nation. Recorded on this the 7th day of February 1877 by J.R. Wright, Clerk of Goingsnake District. And the next one, and which will be the last one, is on the same roll of microfilm, and the category is Section X, Cherokee Estates, March the 25th, 1848 to December the 17th, 1904. And this is the schedule of property and effects belonging to the estate of Moses Downing, deceased. And as a side note, Moses Downing is my third great-grandfather. And here is the schedule of his property, to wit: one Negro man, 40 years old, worth $300. One Negro woman, 40 years old, worth $250. One Negro girl, 4 years old, worth $150. One brown horse worth $30, and one horse worth $25, for a total of $55. One yoke of oxen worth, and it was blank, I couldn't make it out, and then one road wagon, $25, for a total of $40. 5 head of sheep, $5. One set of smith tools, $50, for a total of $55. For amount of sundry shop accounts, $50.81. For amount of a warrant on Cherokee Nation for $93. For amount of a note of W.A. Few, $25. For amount of note of John Terrell, $40. For amount of note of David Sanders, $70. For amount of note of John Langley, $10. For amount due from Moses Doherty, $40. For amount note of, that was blank, I couldn't make that out, and the amount of the money was blank on that. For amount of Messrs. McDaniel and George Hicks, $1,022. For amount of note of Messrs. Sel McClellan and George Adair, $1,000. For amount note of Messrs. A. Homestead and Jesse Bushyhead, $400. For a total amount of value of estate was $3,616.81. George Still was the administrator, and the letter was granted the 25th of March, 1848. And the qualified appraisers were James Downing and Ambrose Downing, who were the sons of Moses Downing, and James Downing was my second great-grandfather, and his brother was Ambrose. And so that concludes my Cherokee Moments for this morning.
I appreciate it, Mary Bell. Thanks very much. It's interesting. There's
You
lots of
notice
good.
how important the feather beds were back then?
What's
Yes,
that?
he said you noticed how important the feather beds were.
Oh,
Yep. They could keep you warm in the wintertime.
I've slept on several.
I have a few. And my grandmother's.
You bet.
Okay. Very good. Well, I think we have some new people with us today. I believe, Emmett, have you been with us before?
I've been on one Zoom meeting before. So
Okay, well,
that's
good.
it.
Well, good to have you back.
Pretty new.
Told your
Kirsten,
dog
you've been,
they can see the dog a little better.
oh,
Oh, the dog?
yes.
There you go.
Oh, that's a pretty fur baby.
Yeah, he's my
Yes.
baby.
And Kirsten, I believe you've been on before too, haven't you? Or not?
Yes, I just missed last month.
Right, that's what I thought, that you generally were on here. And Chuck, I think it's first time for you, right?
Yes, that's right. I was delighted to find out that your meeting was today. I saw it only yesterday, so I'm happy to be here as a guest.
Good. And I should see you in Bentonville later this afternoon, right?
Looking forward to your presentation.
Okay, very good. The Trail of Tears Arkansas chapter is meeting at the new, the official name is what, Native, anyway, it's the new Native American Museum in Bentonville.
Oh yes, it's owned by David Bogle. And in case you're into history, and I suspect you are, David's father, I believe it was the first manager of Sam Walton's store on Bentonville Square. And anyway, interesting individual.
Okay, very good. Good to have you with us. And good to have all of you with us. Okay, and Curtis, I think you have an announcement.
Yes, I recently the Oklahoma chapter Trail of Tears has been given a collection of Cherokee books, and they are mainly for when we sell them. We are going to put that money towards a couple of scholarships for a couple of Cherokee young folks. That was her desire to do that. And among those are really some wonderful and valuable books. I don't know whether you can see it or not. I'll hold it up, but this is an original copy of Emmett Starr's History of the Cherokees, and it's in excellent condition. We also have Jack and David's complete set of their Old Families books. We have a copy of Old Frontiers. We have a set of John Ross papers, both volumes. Whites Among the Cherokees. We have volumes 1 through 5 of the Moravian Diaries. And we have several Grant Foreman books, along with 70 or 80 of other Cherokee books. Just wanted to let the Goingsnake folks know, and if it's too much to make a list really to send out, but if there are any book that a person is interested in, just contact me and we will take care of that business and I can mail it to you.
Sounds good.
Well, appreciate it, Curtis. And hopefully people will be interested in those, because the
Hopefully so.
is hard to come by. So, do we have any other old business or new business?
Are you going to announce about the Trail of Tears cancellations?
I can, yes. Our Trail of Tears conference for this year in Cherokee, North Carolina has been postponed for a year till October of next year, which this is the second time it's happened, and they've done lots of work and they had lots of good events planned, but they're planning all of them at the same time next year. The Eastern Band, with the chief, Richie Sneed, has issued executive order that everyone on the Qualla boundary has to wear a face mask. And also they limited the number of people in the meeting rooms, so we couldn't have our large meeting anyway. And we didn't think people would want to wear masks the entire time. Plus just for the safety of everyone, we thought it was wise to postpone it. So, actually had a side note, a strategic planning meeting last week for the Trail of Tears Association. And one of the persons who would have, and we did it by Zoom, we canceled at the last minute, we were going to meet in Nashville. And one of the persons that was with us found out the last day of our online meeting that he actually had COVID, although he'd had his shots. So he said, had we met in Nashville, then he would have had COVID and spread it to everyone because he wouldn't have known at the time. It was wise. So it was a wise move for us to change that.
Yes.
So hopefully this will be under control before long. Okay. Any other old or new business?
Jake, did your grandmother have a birthday? I saw something on Facebook.
Well, yes, thank you. She did. My grandmother, Mildred Mig, what would be Sanders Tillery Hamilton, turned 93 yesterday. She had 3 of her children, my father and my aunt and an uncle there and their family, and she really enjoyed a good day and probably received more outpouring through this sort of format than typical, but she did always love a good birthday card. And so I'm going to catch up with her tomorrow on Sunday. She's in Proctor, so she's at home for another week, enjoying being at home.
Well, wish her a happy birthday from all of us, especially from me, and tell her that I miss seeing her.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. Good. And thanks for noting that, David. Because Meg was always very active in our organization.
Thank you, David.
Okay. Well, our speaker today, whom we appreciate.
Yeah, right.
Well, one thing I'd mentioned to him when we were talking about a subject, that this is the 100th anniversary of Emmett Starr's book on history of the Cherokee Indians. Of course, Curtis showed the one that they had, and I also have a copy that I obtained thanks to Curtis. I have another one that was rebound using the original materials, but I wanted to show you who this one belonged to.
Millen. Yeah.
Jim Hylam, the principal chief for many, many years. He was a presidential appointee. Philip Biles' grandfather. So I think it's important because here I have one of the principal chief's personal copies of that. So he's sometimes been referred to as the reincarnation of Emmett Starr. So we will have David talk about his previous life as Emmett Starr. It's all yours, David.
Okay. I kind of prepared this because I'm working on a new book about Nancy Ward descendants, and so I did quite a bit of work about Emmett Starr. Besides the biography of Nancy Ward that I've redone, I got 9 appendices about different things affecting her life. And one of the things that I researched was history of Emmett Starr. I did that mainly last year and the first part of this year. And so part of my appendix 9 in Nancy Ward's biography is going to be a biography of Emmett Starr. But I started working on this yesterday morning, and I found some additional things that I hadn't seen before. Much of what is traditionally known about Cherokee mixed blood families through non-historic sources has come through the records of Dr. Emmett Starr. And in 1921, which Jack mentioned is now 100 years, he published his most famous book, History of the Cherokee Indians, their Legends and their Legends and 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 Leg Emmett McDonald Starr was born on the 12th of December, 1870 in the Goingsnake district of the Cherokee Nation, what is now Adair County, Oklahoma, probably in the area south of Westville. His father, Walter Adair Starr, was later a judge in Cowiskowee district. His mother, Ruth Ann Thornton, was the daughter of the Cherokee Committee's longtime clerk, William Thornton. Both of his parents were great-great-grandchildren of Nancy Ward, and all of his grandparents were Old Settler Cherokees. And notice one thing about the dates here regarding Emmett Starr's grandparents. I just realized yesterday that he did not know any of his grandparents. They were all four dead before he was born. Starr attended Cherokee Public Schools in Uwalla and Claremore and graduated from the Cherokee Male Seminary in 1888. Now, I wasn't aware until yesterday when I found this little blurb here in the Veneta Weekly Chieftain that he originally attended Missouri Medical College in St. Louis. Here's a picture of the building of Missouri Medical College in 1890. And here's a page from their catalog from 1890 to 1891. If you look in the far right, upper right of the second section there, you'll see Emmett Starr's name listed, being from Indian Territory. Now then, he apparently transferred to Barnes Medical College in St. Louis, which I originally started researching this. That college didn't actually open until 1892, and that's the year that he apparently graduated. So he must have transferred over there during its first year and graduated from there either in 1892 or 1893. I couldn't find any records online of the students at the Barnes Medical College. After he graduated from there, he worked in the doctor's offices of Dr. Fortner and Bagby in Veneta. He was later known to have practiced in Skytook and Chelsea. Here's a mention of him indicating that he was practicing in Chelsea, this section right here, in November of 1893. In November of 1894, there was an advertisement in a newspaper called the David Journal, which shows him living there to be a physician and journal. The community of David was apparently in Rogers County, but I did a little bit of research on it yesterday and I could not figure out exactly where it is. Have you ever heard of this place, Curtis?
No, I haven't, David.
It had a newspaper beginning there in 1894 that lasted a year or two. And I was very surprised I couldn't find anything about a community called David, but nobody that I've talked to, which has only been now you and Jack, have been able to.
Was there not a copy by the Historical Center in Oklahoma City, on their gateway to Oklahoma history?
These newspapers are there, but as far as finding where the community was, I couldn't determine that.
Oh, okay.
But just looking through the paper from the news it was giving and everything, it appeared that it was in what's now current Rogers County. But where exactly in Rogers County, I don't know.
Well, all of the Starr allotments and property was on the north side of Claremore.
Yeah.
And that's where the Starr Boulevard gets its name.
Okay. In October of 1897, Dr. Starr was practicing in Veneta when this article appeared in the Muskogee Phoenix. And it It mentions his statistical matters relating to the Cherokee Nation and his genealogical research into well-known Cherokee families. This was the first mention I've seen in a newspaper regarding his genealogy research. From 1900 to 1902, he was employed by the Dawes Commission, making pro forma applications to the commission for Cherokees who had appeared on the 1880 and 1896 censuses, but who had not made their own application. There are literally hundreds of these applications made by Dr. Starr, names taken from those rolls who had otherwise not been identified, and the commission determined whether they had died, moved out of the Cherokee Nation, or were enrolled under another name. This is an example of one of these. These would be people that he didn't know, but they were just picking names off of those rolls. Now, we hear today about people say, oh, my family was eligible, but we didn't get on the roll. Well, of course, we all know that's not true. The commission made a real determined effort to identify everybody on the 1880 Cherokee census and the 1896 Cherokee census to try to figure out what's happened to those persons if they otherwise couldn't be identified on the Dawes roll. Now, this was a really interesting article that I found in the, this is a list of votes cast in the Cowiskwe district in August 1901 for the Senate, which is at the top here, and for the council. Dr. Starr is listed right here as a Downing Party candidate. And if you'll look at the number of votes in the far right-hand column, out of the 20 candidates for council, he received the most number of votes. And so he was elected to the council that year. And the Cowiskwe district had 6 counselors out of those 20 people who were elected. So if you go through, you could determine here who were the top 6 vote getters. Now, his father, Judge Starr, died in January of 1906. Notice it says in this article, his remains were laid to rest beside his wife in the family burying ground near his house. And for years, I have been trying, and I've enlisted Curtis's efforts here. I've been trying to locate where these burials were near his house, and we have not had any success. It's possible that the graves were moved to Woodlawn Cemetery in later years, but if you go to look at the cemetery records there, they're not very accurate or detailed. And so if they were not moved, then the graveyard has been desecrated and abandoned. Curtis, did you have anything more you wanted to add here?
No, if you remember, I did locate the property as to where his home would have been. And I talked to the gentleman that currently owned it, asking if there were any graves at all, or had he ever saw any evidence of graves. And he said no, he hadn't, but that a considerable portion of the property had been bulldozed over the years. And at one fence line, there was a large amount of rocks that had been piled up due to the bulldozing. So, but he had never saw any evidence of a grave.
Okay, thanks. Now, this was kind of interesting. This is an example of the very first issue of a newspaper from Claremore in February 1905 called the State Herald. And if you'll notice here in the little editor's blurb, this was edited by Dr. Starr. But this paper only lasted through April of 1905, so approximately 2 months, and then it folded. So it wasn't very successful, apparently. Now, after statehood, he was elected to the Claremore School Board, and he also served as clerk for Rogers County School Superintendent. He was a member of the Sons of the Confederate Veterans and served as its state historian, his membership being made possible due to the service of his grandfather, Joseph McMinn Starr, who's listed as being a forage master in the 1st Cherokee Mounted Volunteers for the Confederacy. Dr. Starr was a charter member of the Pocahontas Club, which allowed honorary male membership in its first years, and he served as its president from 1906 to 1908. He also served as vice president of the Oklahoma Historical Society in 1912. In 1913, he was named librarian of the Northeastern State Normal School in Tahlequah, what's now Northeastern State University, and was a professor of history there in 1916 and 17. Here is a page from the 1915 yearbook showing his picture and a caricature of him saying, "You people will have to get out of the library to talk." That seemed a little informal to me for something going on in 1915 in a university, but I guess the students were doing this. This photo that appeared in that yearbook is the only photo of Emmett Starr I have ever seen, although there must surely be others somewhere. Has anybody else ever seen another photo of Emmett Starr? Nobody popped up here, so I guess not. About this time, he began taking subscription orders for the book that eventually became his History of the Cherokee Indians in 1921, and the cost was announced at $10. We can surmise here that Dr. Starr had essentially abandoned his medical profession during this time. Now, in the 1920s, I couldn't figure out exactly when, he moved to St. Louis, Missouri, where he was employed as a clerk in a bookstore. He died there in 1930. His death certificate indicates he was found dead in his hotel room at 3236A Olive Street on the 31st of January. This location is now the Olive Compton parking garage in St. Louis. His cause of death was listed as carbon monoxide poisoning, whether accidental or intentional, not ascertained. Was anyone aware that he might have committed suicide? I wasn't aware till I really studied this that was a possibility. Now, he was buried at the Woodlawn Cemetery in Claremore.
Excuse me, David. Who was the person who gave in the information?
Yeah,
he evidently lived in St. Louis also.
It was his cousin, Art Starr, his father's brother's son, who was giving a St. Louis address at the time. Did you see that here? Right down here at the bottom, number 14.
Yes, I did. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, that's his first cousin, son of Edward Bruce Starr. And it appears that he's also living in St. Louis at the time, because it just gives a street address here. So I assume that he's living in St. Louis.
Did you say, David, he was the son of Blue Starr?
No, Edward Bruce Starr.
Oh, okay.
Not Blue. Okay. Now, Dr. Starr's grave was not marked for many years. When I first started doing genealogy, there was no marking there. I went to the cemetery once, I know, and there was no stone at what's supposed to be his grave. But there was finally a stone erected there by the Pocahontas Club, I think in the early 70s, but I'm not exactly sure of the date. Notice that on the stone, his death date is incorrect. He died January 31st, not March 31st. Now, in March of 1994, the members of the Association of the Descendants of Nancy Ward gathered for a tribute at his grave. I looked at this picture pretty thoroughly. There's a lot of people in there that I don't recognize who they are. So that was a little surprising to me. I recognize this guy here hogging the tribute there. And I see me, I see Ruth. Jack, is that one of John Adair's sons, or who is that right there?
Actually, it may be John himself.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. These two women are two women here, right here, and maybe right here are cousins of Betty Barker. I don't see her in the photo. We had quite a crowd that day because we had met at the Will Rogers Memorial.
David, you have black hair in that picture.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've dyed it gray since then.
And then, and next to you is the lady from Salisal, right?
Yes. Yeah, I've forgotten her name. No.
Now the one looks almost like Frankie Hargis.
Where?
Behind the lady in blue with the
right there. You know, I saw that too, but I'm thinking, I don't think she's ever been to a meeting except once when she was on the council. So I don't think that's her.
Well, see, I'm thinking that is a little bit too old for it at that time,
Yeah.
94.
Frankie passed away this week. I don't know if everyone knew that. She's been the Cherokee registrar and a descendant of Nancy Ward. And she passed away, and we still are not sure exactly what she died from. She had COVID last year, but apparently had at least some recovered from it. So it's kind of surprising that she died real sudden.
Because she was actually in a coma for several weeks last year.
Okay. Now, when I began researching this biography of Dr. Starr as part of my Nancy Ward biography, I used to believe that he began his genealogical interest as a result of the 1893 court case won by the old settler Cherokees against the U.S. He and his siblings were heirs to several persons and received quite a lot of money on the 1896 old settler payroll. However, I discovered several newspaper articles, which I want to give a shout out here to newspapers.com. I recognized years and years ago that newspapers were an untapped source for genealogy research, but of course it was practically impossible unless you knew a date and a place to find the newspaper article. But it's now possible to find out the date and the place, even if you don't know either of those before you begin. Anyway, I discovered several newspaper articles which indicate that he began his research into Cherokee genealogy and history in about 1891 during a visit with Ruth Starr Bean, who provided him with much information about Nancy Ward's life. However, his principal book, History of the Cherokee Indians and Their Legends and Folklore, was not published until 1921, so we're talking 30 years later. Due to a printer's strike, Dr. Starr was not able to correct the proof of his history, and there are many typographical errors that it contains, and it's continuing to cause a lot of mistakes in genealogies created today by those who only use his book as a sole source. However, his records collections, many of which have never been published, are housed at the Oklahoma Historical Society and are available there on microfilm. At the time his book was about to be published, an article appeared in the Tulsa Daily World on Sunday, April 10th, 1921, which gave a lot of information regarding the beginning of his research. And I'm going to read this article in its entirety. You see the heading of the article, and it says, after more than 30 years of systematic travel among the Cherokee Indians, collecting documents, historical data, and parchments, Dr. Emmett Starr, a mixed Cherokee of white descent, has about reached the fulfillment of his life's ambition, a genealogy of every mixed blood family in the Cherokee Nation. A doctor by profession, Dr. Starr forsook his teaching years ago and answered in his terms to the charm of Cherokee genealogy. Pills, plasters, poultices, splints, and bandages, the agents of mercy which he knew he might distribute among his brothers, were cast aside. The material of his years of labor is compiled in a comprehensive history of the Cherokee Nation from the time of its inception as a tribe before the white man came to America, when the artist's homeland of the ancient homeland of the Cherokee was in the southern Appalachian region, down to the time of the American Revolution and up until it ceased as a tribe in 1907. Dr. Starr gave up his profession and upon a bit of information he accidentally picked up 30 years ago at the home of a Cherokee family, a day's journey from his own home, he relates. He met a woman 91 years old who, after conversation, claimed kinship with him. It evolved, according to Dr. Starr, that she was a great-granddaughter of Nancy Ward, whom the Indians worship as the beloved woman of the Cherokee Nation. This old Indian woman, the doctor states, said that she was reared in the home of Nancy Ward and was 23 years old when Nancy died at the age of 128. The career of Nancy Ward, as told by this old woman, inspired him to delve into the genealogy of the Cherokees. Dr. Starr says, and to this he attributes his first inclination to give up his life to trace it out. Nancy Ward is a character to which Dr. Starr gives many pages in his history. He tells of her privilege to sit in the councils of the elders and chiefs of the nation, how she was clothed with the power of absolute pardon, even after the solemn council had pronounced the doom of death at the stake, how she had sympathized with the colonists during the struggle for American independence, to whose hungry armies she twice sent herds of beef cattle, and of the marvelous increase of her progeny through the successive generations until they were even then numbered by hundreds and included many of the most prominent people in the Cherokee Nation. Being a literary man in the Cherokee Nation did not mean material prosperity during the accumulation of his history. So after giving up the practice of medicine, Dr. Starr filled in a part of his time in educational and clerical pursuits. He served his people as a member of the Tribal Legislative Council, thus gaining an insight into Cherokee politics, which has aided him in preparing his history. The ancient homeland of the Cherokee Indians, Dr. Starr writes, even before the coming of the white man, was in the southern Appalachian region, embracing portions of the states of North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Kentucky, and Virginia. They were often at war with the white colonists in Georgia and the Carolinas after the white man inhabited their colony. At the close of the American Revolution, many families of loyalists or Tories who had been expelled from Georgia and the Carolinas settled among the Cherokees and were adopted as members of the tribe. Numerous intermarriages have followed, and it is a history of these intermarriages that has led Dr. Starr to cover thousands of miles in the last 30 years in an endeavor to trace them to the native source. The Cherokee country, according to Dr. Starr, constantly became more restricted in area, the encroachment of the white settlements increasing. In 1835, the United States negotiated a treaty with representatives of a small minority of Cherokee people, by the terms of which the whole tribe was ultimately forced to abide. This led to the migration of the main body of the Cherokee people to the new reservations in the Indian Territory, the Cherokees being a vanguard to the white man as he pushed further out into the West. The story of this removal, as told by Dr. Starr, is a tragic one. Hundreds of the homesick Cherokees dying on the way westward, their graves being made by the roadside. This occurred in the years 1838 and 1839.
The Cherokee government ceased to exist when Oklahoma was admitted to the Union in 1907. Since then, Oklahoma has been almost continuously represented by the Cherokee in the U.S. Senate and at various times by 3 Cherokee in the lower house of Congress. Okay, that's the end of this article. I want to make a couple of observations. Good luck in figuring out who these 3 Cherokees are that represented Oklahoma in the U.S. House. I think there was only one. Of course, the senator was Robert L. Owen, and he was senator at this time. But the only Cherokee I could find by 1921 that had been elected to the U.S. House was W.W. Hastings, and he had been elected 3 times by that point. However, he was only one person. So I think this news article was wrong in claiming that there were 3 Cherokee in the lower house. The other thing that I want to mention is the recognition of the woman that started Dr. Starr on his genealogy quest. It seemed kind of strange to me that there's no mention of her name in this article. And at first, I was a little puzzled about this. But from other articles that I found, I'm now certain that the woman was Ruth Starr Bean. She was born in 1799 and died in 1895. And so she would have been about 81 or so, 91, when Dr. Starr visited her. This article makes it appear that she was a rather distant relative, but she was in fact his great aunt, and she lived in the Oak Grove community east of Stillwell. Now this here is example, which we've already seen 2 others of today, of Starr's history, an original, which I saw this online. I believe it was for sale for about $800. This one we can see from the inscription at the bottom was owned by Anna Laura Gilliland, who was Anna Laura Turner Gilliland, who didn't die till 1965. And she was a Cherokee. Most of these books were inscribed with the name of the subscriber. I saw a copy online that didn't seem to have a subscriber's name on it, so we must have printed a few extra copies to sell to other people. But the people who were paying the $10 in advance would have received an inscribed copy.
This copy, David, that we have does not have a name on it.
Doesn't. Okay, well, that must have been an extra copy, so we don't have any idea who it was sold to. Now, Jack's copy was J.B. Miley. And most of the ones I've seen do have a name inscribed, but not all of them.
My copy has the name Tyner on it.
Oh. This is the cover page from Dr. Starr's book. And here, this was prepared by Dr. Bob Blackburn. This is a bibliography of all of Emmett Starr's works. I have never seen this Shoto genealogy that's mentioned, but apparently there's a copy at the Oklahoma Historical Society. So next time I send my researcher there, Jack, I'll be asking to see if we can get a copy of that, because I don't have a copy. One of these books, and Jack might know for sure, I believe it's the Encyclopedia of Oklahoma. Nearly all of the print copies of it were destroyed. Is that the right one?
Yes, it is.
And I think it had to do with payment. Is that right?
What? That's what I understand, yes.
Okay, I couldn't find a reference anywhere to the copies being destroyed for not being paid for. But, and some of these books you can get online. His history of the Cherokee Indians is reproduced online many, many, many places. And Cherokees West also. Anyway, that concludes my talk.
Well, we appreciate that very much, David. And David has continued his Emmett Starr's research and expanded on it greatly. You want to tell them more about your book that'll be coming out?
Well, I have a new book about Nancy Ward. I've already sent it to the printer. I sent it actually this week, but I'm having some problems with the cover. They don't want me to just send what I want the cover to look like. They have these special specifications, which I might be able to show. This, can you see these specifications here? They want the cover to look like that. And so I'm having to figure out how to do that, which I'm halfway there. So this
Who's your printer?
Sheridan Book Publishers in Chelsea, Michigan. That's the same people who published the Moravian books. Bob turned me on today to another place where I may go. At least next time I may review, called Lulu. But what I've done is I've rewritten a biography of Nancy Ward on 8.5 by 11 paper. It's about 15 pages, quite a bit larger than before. And I've researched every contemporary reference to her that I could find in the 18th and 19th century, and a lot of things that were dated after that, but seemed to have, like the Ruth Starr Bean article where she discussed how she had lived with Nancy Ward for a while and some of the other things. And it's from Ruth Starr Bean that we have the story of Nancy saving Lydia Bean's life. And also Ruth Starr Bean indicates that her husband was a granddaughter of Lydia, but that's a grandson of Lydia, but I have never been able to prove that. And so that's kind of bugging me a little bit. Anyway, after the article about just specifically Nancy Ward, I have 9 appendices about different aspects of Nancy's life and the people who were in it. Long biography of Joseph Martin and things like that. And so that's going to bring it up to about 90 pages in my book. And I'm hoping, I decided not to do it right now, but in a few months or a year, I'm going to publish that part of a biography in a separate book for people who don't need all of her descendants. And then I have a list of her descendants, which as far as I can tell, is complete through her great, 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 4 greats grandchildren. Although I don't have all of the birth and death information about all the people in the last generation. And the total, I'm printing this in 2 volumes. Each volume will be about 750 pages. So the total is about 1,500 pages. The woman told me she could put it all in 1 volume, but I didn't see how she could have a 1,500 page book in 1 volume. So I told her I wanted it in 2.
Do we have any other business? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
All in favor, say aye.
Thank you.
Aye.